Hi, this is Rahman Sheikh. Welcome to Fortnightly Railway Transportation Systems podcast. I am the host and railway systems specialist. This podcast is primarily focused on railway experts who have vast amount of experience and contributed greatly to this amazing industry. This is not a technical seminar but focuses on feel good stories, individual journeys, their success and failures, motivating younger generation to kickstart their career in railways and creating a sense of pride for the railway people who devoted their lives on the most environment friendly public transportation. Today, we are joined by Lindsay Edmonds, a seasoned professional with over 25 years of experience across the rail, electricity, and aviation sectors. Lindsay is known for his expertise in developing wide ranging solutions in the space of risk management and safety assurance. His collaborative approach to consultation ensures compliance and legislative requirements are developed into the solution, and when designing solutions, the end user is at the center of the design. He has led complex projects at Sydney Trains, Sydney Light Rail, Arcades, and more recently on the Sydney Metro integration of the city and Northwest. He is highly skilled in safety change management, risk management, and driving projects to a safe outcome. He is now taking on his next adventure as the Safety Systems and Assurance Advisor at National Intermodal, where Lindsay continues to deliver high impact solutions in the transport industry. Hi, Lindsay. Welcome
Hi,
to the pod.
Raymond. Thanks very much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today, and hopefully we can have a really insightful discussion.
Likewise, and we would definitely have insightful discussions which would help our audience. So, let's start with our first generic question. Can you share insights into your journey across the rail, electricity, and aviation industries and how these experiences have shaped your career in safety and systems assurance?
Thanks for that one. Look, all three industries being high risk, definitely had the opportunity to learn and develop over those periods of time, especially starting in aviation, where I found it was the most advanced in respect of the safety systems and the methodologies that needed to be implemented, all the way from air traffic control to flying to ensuring that everything on the ground stays safe as well. So I'll take those methodologies from the aviation industry through then into electricity, and more recently for at least the last 10 to 12 years in three separate modes, being heavy rail, light rail, and metro, and now going into logistics. So definitely an interesting point of view. All of the industries are developing and innovating consistently, and that's been the core of my work with everything that I've done so far. Key insight probably is that from each placement, I've been able to develop my consultation and communication. I idealize that through early communication with the front line and putting the user at the center of everything the design needs to be, so that the people who need to implement it can and will implement it in an effective way.
Wow, great insights, Lindsay. So you mean in safety and systems assurance space, rail is behind aviation?
It's different. It's not necessarily behind. It's just a different philosophical way of looking at safety. Aviation, by virtue that you're in the air and you've got 250 to 300 people that you've got to get back down on the ground, level of safety sophistication that's been developed has been more significant than I'd suggest the rail industry needs to be. It's not necessarily that one's behind the other or vice versa. It's actually that the level of safety that the consumer wants to have determines what level of assurance has needed to be implemented. And automated trains is now an industry in Australia, so that was not heard of 10 to 12 years ago. Yeah. The ability and the confidence that you had a train driver up the front was always paramount, I think, in rail previous. And, everyone's loving an automated railway. And they get on it quite easily.
They are.
And that's the level of safety. People get into airplanes because the level of safety has actually been developed to the extent that everyone feels comfortable getting on board, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, thank you. Your diverse experience would definitely add value to rail industry. Moreover, your role especially involves managing safety and systems assurance for large scale projects. So, Lindsay, what methodologies and frameworks do you find most effective in ensuring regulatory compliance and operational
Yeah,
safety?
that's an interesting conversation because Australia's regulatory environment for, rail, electricity and aviation is very, very robust. And the guidance from the regulators actually gives us our framework to deliver to. Having said that, the regulators are also very flexible in what they want to see as a pragmatic way of an operator delivering their safety requirements. So the legislation, both in rail and aviation, is what is called outcome-based, and therefore the operator actually needs to show how they are compliant to that, and then through auditing and assurance, we get safe outcomes in the delivery. That said, we've also got plenty of Australian and international standards that gives us direction on how to develop safety cases, and more so, the integration of human factors and RAM. Developing safety case and that kind of stuff, EM 50126 gives us our framework for how we can build the safety cases for major projects and, the rolling effect of operations and maintenance. By virtue of working with that standard, that then feeds into the risk profile for the operator maintainer to develop their compliance against the legislation, and proving that the design, when implemented, can be operated and maintained effectively and safely.
Beautiful. Lindsay, from regulatory requirements, let's move to your other area, which is web based portals. Could you elaborate on your experience with developing web based portals for internal stakeholders at Sydney Trains, emphasizing user centered design and legislative compliance?
So I worked on a project for 2.5 years to develop an integrated management system for Sydney Trains, with the effect that it would be distributed on tablets, on smartphones and on desktop devices. And working with a project team and developers, came up with a solution, process flow, and allow the user to actually understand where they were in a process. As much as Sydney Trains actually operates lots and lots of different applications because of its size, similarly to other high risk businesses, had quite a diverse set of applications to make the operation run, and they still do. But trying to get that to come into a centralised environment posed an interesting project. Needed to develop a whole set of requirements, not only legislative ones, but also looking at the assurance frameworks for finance and legal and all of the other associated parts of the business that we were going to touch. So ultimately, the prototype got developed. It needed further development at the point in time where I left Sydney Trains to actually go into implementation. And from that point of view, having gone through that project delivery, I got the ability to be able to understand multiple points of view on user-centered design and how people interact with web-based systems.
Wow, Lindsay. Now, also, let's touch on your approach on change management and stakeholder engagement in projects that requires significant process transformation.
Absolutely. I think nearly every business has some level of change management going on at every single day. But certainly in the complex project space, started in Qantas implementing safety management system legislation back in 2009 to 2011. And a key portion of that was how to get engineering and safety change actually embedded into the business and sorted. What I do find in rail is that configuration change and change management from that point of view is actually a very well developed methodology. The gated system that we use, whether it's in transport, whether it's in heavy rail, light rail, is a consistency, certainly in the railways, of how an asset or a system is developed, and that you have that stage gate process to be able to implement your concept design, then your detailed design, and then through testing and commissioning, but that you've already considered operations and maintenance at the endpoint. The whole device of change management. In respect of change management, if you know what your end game is, the design actually can be well educated, and the end user will actually implement it significantly easier. So, and that's, I think, where, these transformative projects actually get good buy-in, because you've got that end user experience actually educating your outcome. Certainly known on the majority of projects that I've worked on more recently, had multiple stakeholder engagements with end users to educate what changes would look like. And that way then you can develop that into your design. It helps with scope creep and really tightening up what the change is all about. And if you have a solid framework, certainly in the railways around configuration change or network assurance, that helps drive the change management process effectively, and you actually have good engagement because people are confident that you're going to achieve the outcomes you're actually wanting to achieve.
Yeah, I do agree with that. The process is quite important. So, in your opinion, what are the key challenges in implementing safety and systems assurances across multidisciplinary projects like rail systems?
Defining the scope of the project is probably your key challenge, and minimizing its creep whilst you're going through the process. Having said that, sometimes creep can actually be a beneficial thing. So it's sort of a double-edged sword, if I can say that, because sometimes you can have a really well-defined scope that's actually really difficult to implement, and you'll do lots of changes to implement, or you'll have a scope that's not so well defined, and that way you're a bit more flexible within the boundaries that you've got in terms of the change. But having said that, engagement and consultation will tighten up how the projects actually get implemented, and good consultation and good project management will bring everyone along for the journey. So another key aspect that I suppose is considered is accepting that what you don't know, but that you have that ability to be able to have that consultation and ask questions that might develop what you don't know into something that you do know, and that you can actually manage it. Because getting to 98% design and then finding an issue that might be insurmountable that you could have managed earlier with a bit more consultation certainly is a difficult place to be in, and certainly builds frustration in the project team if you've got to that extent. But if you have that, consistent stakeholder engagement and that consistent drive to finding an outcome, then definitely that's a portion that works significantly better. Probably the last portion to that is actually playing the game and not the people in it. So learning how everyone has a contribution to the mix. The reason why they're there is because they have a reason to be there, and that everyone brings capability and opinion that can be leveraged. And so being able to facilitate that outcome is in a multidisciplinary project, being able to converse with multiple people is the place that we need to be.
Yeah, great insights, Lindsay. I absolutely concur with you. So we spoke about people. How about technology? So what role does technology play in enhancing safety and compliance within rail operations based on your personal experience?
Technology's everywhere now. Everything's got an app. Everything's technology driven. I mean, we've seen from the development of automated railways to artificial intelligence that these technologies are not going away. It's, I suppose, looking at how technology actually benefits our outcome, and that it's the right piece of technology or the right application to fit the outcome that you're wanting to achieve. There is also a flip side to it, using technology as a big stick approach. So you buy the application, but you only might use 10% of it. Why did you buy that application for if it doesn't really fit the situation? There's certainly now so many pieces of software out in the marketplace to do so many different things that there's so many options that everyone can work with. So definitely, I think the question needs to be is what is the influence on people's behaviour that technology can bring, and not necessarily just that technology is a driver for compliance. We actually need to look at how the technology mix with process and people gives us benefit that we need to achieve, and that doesn't import risk that was not thought about when you're designing.
By listening to you, I have got a follow-up question, because this makes me think about the risks So, as you have been involved quite heavily in risk
Mhm.
management, can you discuss a notable project where these processes were critical to project
Oh,
success?
the whole configuration change of any change. You're identifying how significant the change may be when even you're kicking off the change management process. You're then setting up workshops for identifying the scope of the change and then assessing that change in terms of, preliminary hazard assessments into, interfaces if they exist. Like you're breaking down the scope to the extent you're trying to identify all the hazards within it. And then you're looking at, operational hazard assessment after that to be able to say how are the hazards that are going to be mitigated and not eliminated, how is the operations and maintenance people actually going to implement that into the business and be able to actively change their business to operate and maintain that new change, whether it's, an extension of railway or it's, changing a piece of software. All of these changes have a certain level of risk that's either being exported or imported, either way into the business. And how do you actually then change the business to fit the processes and those kinds of things? So it's definitely interesting conundrum each time you go through change management, that you see that you're going to get a return on investment and you're also going to get a benefit that's either more efficient or more safe.
Wow, looks quite critical. Then, how do you balance this? Especially, how do you balance these agile methodologies with stringent regulatory requirements of rail industry, especially in your recent roles?
One of your key stakeholder is the regulator. And the regulator 98% of the time, 99% of the time has, industry experience to understand what you're trying to change. And the reasons why they have notifications of change is for the strict reasons of we want to see how the risk is being managed. And if we're looking at how the regulatory environment can be complied with whilst still trying to be flexible and agile, that's then where project management and robust risk management intertwine, and you're using and leveraging the capability within the business to ensure that the delivery of the new methodology or asset is legally compliant and that you've gone through your checks and balances and that the executive team that's managing this takes on the risk profile that is changing either as an improvement or not as a degradation, but as a change in the risk mix for the company, because sometimes some changes does actually import some more risk to the business that the business needs to manage.
Yeah, I do agree with that. So this makes me think about
Yeah.
strategies. Then what strategies do you ensure that the safety and assurances practices evolve with technological advancements in rail systems?
And yeah, it's interesting. Again, it's almost you rely on your subject matter expertise that you employ to give that capability, the executive team to be able to make those choice decisions, whether it's financial or a legal compliance thing, or that they're taking on a new asset or a new way of operating the business. All of those systems either bring in a new value of risk or it brings in an ability to change the way you operate the business and potentially become more efficient. So certainly from that point of view, the governance and the strength of the governance and how you engage at all levels of the business, all the way from the board all the way down to frontline workers, all of that mix of conversation and consultation needs to be done so that whoever's working with that outcome has the tools and the understanding to be able to implement it.
Could you share a challenging scenario from your career, how you navigated it, particularly as you just said, in terms of maintaining safety standards while meeting project deadlines?
Yeah, absolutely. So, 20 years plus experience, had a few projects to implement. Definitely following and understanding robust processes and understanding how you can facilitate conversation and workshops is probably the key to that. Certainly seen some episodes throughout that career where conflicting ideas are put on the table, and being able to manage those conflicting ideas is definitely an interesting space to be in, to come up with an outcome and a solution that actually works for all parties that are in and stakeholders that are associated. Having said that, if something does go wrong, we always go through the investigation processes and try to understand where you can learn and improve. But you can also do that proactively, and certainly when you've completed a project, post-implementation reviews are a great source of lessons learnt, and being able to then rework, if you've got the opportunity, to some good things that have happened in the project, and how can we improve things that didn't work so much. So that's definitely a learning that I've taken from project success. And ultimately, you want to be able to celebrate the project success as well.
We do. I completely agree with that. And in the recently, we have been doing a lot. So let's talk about something a different perspective of your career. As someone experienced in business analysis and process improvement, what advice would you give to aspiring professionals looking to enter the rail industry?
Well, every day is a new experience and something will occur. Embrace it, even if it seems difficult to do so. Listen and learn from the experience, and sometimes there's nuggets in there, and sometimes there's not. And there's some things are going to be hard, some things are going to be not so hard, but we're here on the journey all the way through. Certainly for people who are joining the industry, don't be scared of asking questions. You'll only know once you've asked. Sometimes a little bit of knowledge goes a long way. If you found your niche, stick with it and be the best that you can be in that world. You'll try something, it might fail, try again. It's okay, you'll learn from that experience. I'm currently working in a greenfield environment, and it gives me the opportunity to work with others that have done greenfield opportunities before. I'm learning every day so far new things about how a new industry works and operates. So I'm always learning as well, even though I've got 20 plus years experience. So every day is a new experience for me.
Yeah, I agree. We need to learn every day. Can you tell us something more about National Intermodal, where you work as assurance advisor, please?
So National Intermodal is a federal government agency that is tasked with developing the warehousing and stabling for inland rail. We're developing warehousing and intermodal freight yards in just north of Melbourne, in Parks, and just to the west of Brisbane, to connect to inland rail, with the potential opportunity to develop new and innovative ways of moving freight from one container to another, and implementing the strategy for inland rail, which is 1.8 kilometre trains that have 2 containers per carriage. And we're working on the methodologies to be able to take containers either from other railways onto inland rail, or vice versa, putting containers onto trucks and then out into the wider landscape. So that's what National Intermodal is about at the moment. And yeah, we're right at the start of implementing that journey.
Well, great journey, I should say. Amazing work. Looking ahead, what innovations or trends do you foresee influencing safety and assurance practices in rail over the next decade?
I think we can't do anything without the implementation of levels of artificial intelligence. We're going to need to leverage that into our processes and understanding. But having said that, we've still got to keep the human factor at the center of things, because as much as we can code things out, we still have how humans interact with the systems. Definitely identifying talent coming through and nurturing that, giving our next wave of talent the best ability to be implemented, noting that their environment is significantly different to what we are in today. So where they're going to be in the future will not be the same as what we're seeing today. It'll be significantly different. But ultimately, we need to have better engagement of our people to achieve outcomes. And just that ongoing practice of good consultation and good implementation.
Well, great insights, and I completely agree with your analysis as well. And Lindsay, thanks for your time. We covered a lot of things, and thanks for sharing your knowledge on this platform.
It's been a pleasure, and thanks very much for the opportunity to get onto your podcast and being able to, I suppose, give some insights into what I've been able to do over the last 20 years. So I feel this opportunity has gone both ways. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I really appreciate, in spite of you being sick, you managed to come onto the pod.
Done good.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you.
I believe everyone listening to this podcast has got something to take away from today's discussion. If you like this podcast, please listen, follow, and share this podcast within your network. If you believe we should be sharing your story or someone within your network, there is a railway leader who should be here sharing his or her contribution to this industry, contact me on railway transportation systems at gmail.com. Thank you for your time today. See you next fortnight. Until then, stay safe and take care of yourself.